Hope everyone's having a pleasant morning. We're driving up to Las Vegas today from San Diego by way of LA, if that makes any sense. In our 2003 5.9 Cummins Ram 3500. And this is just a fantastic truck. We don't get to drive it nearly enough. Last time we were out in this part of the country, which was late July, we drove it a decent amount, but not on a long trip like this. A lot of people have written in and asked various questions about potentially about the pros and cons of buying a 20 to 22-year-old truck. Okay, one of them you just heard. Especially if it's a Chrysler product, or in this case Daimler Chrysler, which is who owned them at the time, among many others. These trucks are not for the faint of heart if you are afraid of doing basic maintenance, or if you don't have a backyard mechanic who can do basic maintenance on them. That noise you hear, the chiming noise, that right there, that is the noise it makes every time you turn on the blinker at night when you've got the lights on. It starts blinking fast because it thinks it's got a light bulb out, and it turns out no, it doesn't. But there's some voltage drop or a short somewhere, who knows what, that tricks the truck into thinking it has a light bulb out. If you notice, the right turn signal does not do that, whether or not the lights are on. But the left blinker, if you use it at night when you've got the lights on, the parking lights or the main lights, the driving lights, service drives, it will start chirping at you because it thinks you've got a light bulb out. You notice the dashboard lighting. It's fine on the left, but you can't see anything on the right. And oh, by the way, on the right is your temp gauge and your oil pressure gauge, which is kind of important information. But the dashboard lighting is kind of old and decrepit. Again, this truck is 22 years old. Had to get a new radio because the OEM radio and cassette tape player died, and it's just a cheap little Sony head unit, maybe $100, and it works most of the time. The dashboard, as we mentioned before, the dashboards in these things were known to crack severely. And when we bought this truck in 2013, more than 10 years ago, the dashboard was cracked into a million pieces. And so they actually made a replacement dashboard cover for these trucks because of how widespread the problem was. And the fact that everybody's dashboard was cracking. And so there's just little glitches like that and little issues you're going to have to accept and deal with. The ignition key, you can actually pull it out of the ignition with the engine running. You can pull it out of the ignition if you turn the engine off and turn it one click past the position where you remove it, and that's the accessory position. And if you're going too fast, again, you turn it off and you turn it a little bit too far without even meaning to, pull the key out of the ignition. Well, then you got the accessories running, and your radio and whatever else is going to kill the battery, or batteries, I should say. So you just got to be careful about little stuff like that. We mentioned before the window switches. That entire panel of switches there has been known to break off, meaning the switches underneath the panel, and sort of submerge themselves into the door guard. And then you can't open your windows unless you kind of hold them with a pair of pliers. Hold one of the switches with a pair of pliers and then use the other one. And then you got to super glue it back into position, stuff like that. And so if you're afraid of little issues or little problems like that, don't buy a 20-year-old truck. The power steering fluid, you got to check it all the time, because these power steering pumps, it's like the O-ring between the reservoir and the pump or something like that, or maybe one of the lines just gets old and cracks, or maybe one of the there could be a bunch of reasons why the power steering fluid leaks, but these trucks are known to just devour power steering fluid, and you don't want to burn out the pump, which will happen immediately when it runs out completely. So you just have to check the fluid religiously and keep a couple quarts with you at all times. But once you get used to little stuff like that, the sort of inner beauty of these trucks shines through. The fact that Again, this thing has 400 plus thousand miles and has never needed an engine overhaul. The transmissions are going to need to get rebuilt about every 100,000 to 200,000 miles because they're the cheap, crappy 47 RE, or in this case, which is the standard output, or the 48 RE, which came with the high output the year this truck was built in 03. Yeah, those are not good transmissions. Even the 68 RFE, which came in 2007.5 when they went from the 5.9 to the 6.7. Not the greatest transmission. It's a 6-speed, so it's a little better. Not the greatest transmission. It's sort of this Frankenstein thing that's been built and rebuilt and adapted since the 1960s, apparently. If you got a 13 and up, I think, high output, which only is available in the 3500, then you can get the ASIN. Then it comes with the ASIN, and that's a good transmission. If you got a 2025 and up, then you get the 8-speed ZF Powerline, which, from everything we're hearing, is just a fantastic transmission. But there are a million reasons why you would not want to own a 2025 model year pickup truck built by anybody. Starting with the fact that it's a $70,000 to $100,000 investment proposition into a depreciating asset, which is preposterous. Starting with the fact that their complexity is extreme, and even basic maintenance may be outside the reach of a normal person. And so again, there are so many reasons why a lot of people look out, search far and wide for these older ones, the 2003 to 07.5, which were the first few years of the 3rd gen Ram. Again, started in 03, that's when the Common Rail 5.9 came out, and it went all the way to 07.5, which is when they changed it out from a 5.9 to a 6.7 and added all the dreaded emissions crap that we have come to know and hate with a passion. So what's there to like about this truck? The fact that it will go for weeks and months and years with very, very, very basic maintenance. It only needs oil changes. It only needs the power steering fluid topped off. It only needs tires rotated. If you remember to air in the tires, it's going to need wiper blades, especially in the Southwest here with all the heat and the ozone. It breaks down the rubber, and eventually the wiper blades are going to disintegrate into nothingness. It's going to need, the bulbs and the cab marker lights. You got to replace those every now and then because they will burn out. If you get LEDs, you'll never have to worry about them again. It's got little electrical gremlins, like we mentioned. But again, the beauty of these things shines through on a constant basis. The fact that you're not having to take it into the dealer for recalls every 6 months, like you do in a newer Ford. The fact that you're not having to take it into the dealer when, again, basic stuff breaks on it. A backyard mechanic with very, very little specialized knowledge can work on these things easily. First of all, because of the mechanical simplicity, and second of all, because of the fact that it's easy to get to everything. You open the hood, and the engine compartment isn't jam-packed with hoses and ducting and again, all that EGR crap that you got to dig through for hours and hours just to get to the thing you're trying to fix. The fact that it's a straight 6, which by itself is an enormously simple engine that's very, very easy to work on. All the intake stuff is on one side of it. All the exhaust is on one side of it. There's only one cylinder head. There's only one intake manifold. There's only one exhaust manifold. There's only one turbo. And the turbo's easy to get to if you ever have to do anything to it. This thing's on the original turbo from 22 years and 400 plus thousand miles ago. The fact that it's not 6 feet off the ground, the fact that you can actually open the hood and lean in over it and not have to get up on a step ladder and like hoist yourself up and over the engine compartment. The fact that you don't have to pull the cab off of it to work on the vast majority of what you need to do. And so those reasons make it just an enormously attractive truck to live with on a day in and day out basis. If you're in the Southwest, putting aside the fact that the heat and the ozone are gonna, crack your wiper blades, putting aside the fact that if you're in Las Vegas or somewhere, or maybe Phoenix, the extreme summer heat is going to, I mean, it can get so hot that it'll evaporate the grease in your bearings. But it's not as if the truck can't handle the heat in terms of its ability to keep itself cool. No, it's got a fantastic cooling system. If you're in Southern California, or if you're in, I don't know, Northern Nevada, if you're in Idaho, the eastern half of Oregon, eastern half of Washington, this is a Utah, maybe Colorado, this is a fantastic truck. This is a tremendous truck because, again, the lack of humidity means the electrical system isn't having little issues happen where moisture gets into connections and contacts and corrodes them. The fact that the body isn't under constant attack by moisture and road salt and snow and ice and things like that. Because as you probably know, with Chrysler products from that time frame, and even from much more recent time frames, the metallurgy on these things is not that good, and the bodies on these things will rot into nothingness, into a pile of rust, if you spend too much time in wet or cold climates. Even the southeast, there's not a lot of snow down there, but it's so damn humid that's gonna do a lot to these trucks. So again, if you're in Arizona, for instance, if you're in the western half of Texas, these are fantastic trucks, absolutely fantastic trucks, and they will run forever and treat you great. The steering on this one, again, it's an 03. If you had a third gen Ram 03 to 09, you could practically take your hands off the steering wheel for a mile at a time, and it's gonna track itself straight. It knows how to get down the road straight without constant adjustments. That's only the two-wheel drive. If you had a four-wheel drive third gen Ram, yeah, you're fighting the wheel constantly because it does not know how to drive straight. And we had an 06 four-wheel drive third gen Ram, and it was such a hassle to keep it pointed straight on the highway. It was so annoying that we had to get rid of it. I don't know if it's the track bar or what it was, but it did not like to drive straight. The two-wheel drive, you could practically drive this thing in your sleep, and it'll just keep going straight and will not bother you. It's got tighter steering than most cars, most sedans, and that's because it's got rack and pinion steering. It doesn't have a recirculating ball or whatever. It's got power steering, rack and pinion steering, and it's just an absolute pleasure to drive it. Something else to mention: if you do a lot of towing and you tow more than, let's just say, 8,000 or 10,000 pounds, these trucks are not going to be the happiest with that amount of weight. I think the max you can legally tow with it is around 12,000, 13,000 because of the GCWR. You can max out the rear axle on this thing if you're not too careful. It's got, I think, a 6150 rear axle. It's got a 9900 GVWR. And so it's not as if you're going to max it out very easily, but if you don't pay attention, you might accidentally max out the rear axle with your tongue weight or your pin weight. And again, if you've got more than about a 12,000, 13,000 pound trailer, you're going to max out the GCWR. The truck is not going to complain, and it's still going to be able to stop because it's got very, very good brakes. It's got fantastic brakes, but you do not want to drive overloaded for many, many reasons. The least of which is that the first time you run a church van full of kids off the road, the first question anybody's going to ask is, where's your weight ticket and how much did you weigh? And if you're over your weight, it doesn't matter what your excuse is. You're not talking your way out of that, and you're looking at jail time and massive financial penalties and lawsuits and nuclear verdicts and so on and so forth. So run legal. And in this truck, again, it means 12,000, 13,000 pounds on the trailer. And again, the rear axle is 6150, which means you're looking at about, call it 3,000 pounds of tongue weight or pin weight. And to be honest, if you run more than about a 7,000 or 8,000 pound trailer, the truck won't be super happy going up hills. In fact, it will complain early and often if you go up hills. With either the 47RE in the standard output or the 48RE in the high output, it just doesn't like doing it. The downshifts are very violent when you're under a lot of load, from like third to second or from fourth to third. It actually feels like a 5-speed because it's got it's a 4-speed with a lockup torque converter. In another video, I said it's got an overdrive. No, it's got a lockup torque converter. And when the torque converter locks up, it is a significant emotional event, and it makes it feel like you're shifting up into 5th gear. The revs drop way down, and you can hear that turbo spool way up, and it feels like it's a jet aircraft getting ready to take off. It's kind of enduring, the sensation you get when the torque converter locks up. But that thing's going to unlock pretty early when you're going up hills under heavy load or mountains, and then it's going to downshift from 4th to 3rd. Not a pleasant experience. 3rd to 2nd is a decidedly unpleasant experience. And so keep that in mind. If you live in the mountains, it's okay going up and down steep hills without a trailer, with a very light trailer hitched up, but it does not appreciate going up steep hills, again, with the automatic, with either of the 4-speed automatics and any real substantial amount of weight, just call it more than 5,000 or 6,000 pounds, or more than 6,000, 7,000 pounds, as the youngsters would say. And then coming back down, oh, by the way, if you've got the 6-speed, either the 5-speed in the early versions or the 6-speed in the later ones, it's got a very good manual transmission. It's got like an NVG 4500 or an NVG 5600, or it's got the G56, which is a fantastic manual transmission, which will last forever, and a pretty solid clutch too, that can put up with a decent amount of abuse. But most people don't have that. And if we're being honest, it's not a lot of fun driving a manual transmission with a diesel anyway, because you're constantly shifting, you're constantly short shifting it. You're not going to rev it all the way out like you would a gas engine. And you know, most people, you get to a certain age, you get tired of shifting gears all the time. You turn 40, it stops being a pleasure. And we've seen the same thing even in our little diesel VW, the cheating VW diesel Passat. We thought the manual was going to be much more fun of a transmission than the DSG, and it's not, because the diesel just doesn't like to rev. But in any case, that's the issue you got going uphill in the automatic. And then the issue you got coming back down is that there's no exhaust brake. On the 07.5 and up, when they put a 6.7 in there, they put a VGT turbo. But the 5.9 does not have a VGT turbo. It's got a big turbo that takes forever to spool up. And the boost comes on eventually, you know, when you need it. But going downhill, you got no exhaust brake functionality, which means you're relying on the service brakes and your trailer brakes. And after taking this thing through the Rockies with about an 8,000 pound trailer, it's not an experience we ever care to repeat, because you cook the brakes and you can smell them. Even if you're trying to be as cautious as possible and, you know, getting all your speed, you know, carrying no speed into the downhills once you crest a mountain pass or whatever, the truck is going to want to get away from you. And then you're cooking the brakes. So you don't want one of these trucks if you're going to be doing a lot of towing in mountains. You just don't. But again, a place like Texas, where it's mostly flat, this is the perfect truck for Texas. This is a perfect truck to max out at a 12 or 13,000 pound trailer in Texas, because you're mostly on the flats. and it'll go all day and night, and months and years at a time in the flats. Or, like we're doing today, if you're driving out to Vegas, we don't have a trailer hitched up this morning, and we might have, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 hitched up on the way back to Southern California, and that's fine. You can work with that. Even coming down where I-15 comes down past like the high desert, like through Victorville, Apple Valley, and down into the LA, so-called LA Basin. That's a pretty steep downhill coming down the mountains. I don't know if it's like the San Gabriel Mountains or what it is, but yeah, that's a very steep downhill. And with an 8 or 10,000 pound trailer, this truck will not be happy on that downhill. 4,000 or 5,000 pounds, it's not that big a deal. This area, by the way, is indescribably pretty. You come out through like Barstow, Fort Irwin, in the NTC, past Yermo and Peggy Sue's, which is like an institution if you've ever deployed to the NTC. And then you're just driving through the mountains, like toward Baker, and then in toward Las Vegas. It's a very, very pretty area, especially in the morning, especially in the evening around sundown. Exceptionally pretty. But oh, by the way, that uphill when you leave Baker going north on I-15, that can be a real test of a truck and its power and its cooling system when you're pulling a heavy trailer, especially when the temps get hot, because the air is, getting thin, and thin air going through your radiator, going through your intercooler, has a it's much less effective at keeping you cool. And so when it's 100+ degrees out and you're loaded heavy, yeah, you could start to overheat very, very easily on that like 15-minute uphill stretch there. But other than that, again, it's indescribably pretty. So anyway, I hope that's enough to go on. If you're the kind of person who does not mind doing basic maintenance, or if you have a backyard mechanic, or just a local garage that isn't going to try to nickel and dime you and rip you off on the basic maintenance that these trucks need, it's the perfect truck for you. You're going to have to find one that doesn't have a ton of rust and that has not had a ton of use and abuse, and you're going to have to do a very, very detailed inspection on it, and take like a 10-page checklist with you and check everything, and understand that you might have to replace a ton of hoses. You might have to rebuild the transmission. You might have to replace the carrier bearing, because those tend to go bad on these, and it just causes a ton of driveline vibration. You're going to have to do work in the rear axle probably. You might have to do wheel bearings. You might have to do suspension work and ball joints and things like that, because all that stuff is going to go bad after a decade or two, as you would expect it would. But the good part is that it's not going to take going to the dealer to get that work done, because any halfway competent mechanic can do it easily and quickly, because of how easy it is to get to everything on this truck. So, if you're one of those kind of people, again, if you live in the Southwest, where there's not a lot of humidity, this is the perfect truck for the Southwest, and where you don't have to worry about driving in the snow. So a two-wheel drive is practical year-round. Again, this is the perfect truck for a place like Southern California, Nevada, Utah, maybe Eastern Colorado. Probably not though. Arizona, New Mexico, Idaho, Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington State. The perfect truck for you. And they're getting harder and harder to find in good condition. It's very hard to find a one-owner truck with 20 years on it and not, 1 million miles. But don't be afraid of high mileage. We bought this thing with 286 on it, and it's got 419 going on 420,000. And like the miles do not matter to it. Maybe when you get to 500,000, you might have to rebuild the engine. but it's possible you could do an in-frame rebuild because of how easy it is to get everything. It's not clear to me if you could get the head, the cylinder head off it because of how far back it goes in the engine compartment. But I'm guessing you could. Don't be afraid of the 24 valve train. That thing is indestructible. Don't be afraid of the high pressure fuel system, the common rail fuel system. That thing is indestructible because it's got a CP3 that cannot be killed. We had an employee put gasoline into this thing, and we had and he drove it for a little while until it died with gasoline going through the lift pump and the CP3. And yes, it died, and it had to have a decent amount of work done. The CP3 and the lift pump and the lines and all that stuff, and the injectors had to be cleaned, but it did not destroy the CP3, and it didn't shower the entire fuel system with tiny metal fragments. It took maybe $1,000 of work and practically no new components to get this truck back on the road. That's how durable they are. So again, could not recommend it more highly. And if you're one of those people in those circumstances, not doing a ton of heavy towing in mountains, not having to drive a lot in snow and ice, so you can live with a two-wheel drive, and you're not afraid of doing basic mechanical work, or you know somebody who can, this is the absolute perfect truck for you. And if you're not the kind of person who needs CarPlay and needs a self-driving system, you know, we got a Tesla with full self-driving. It's a great car, and it's nice having the car do 99% of the driving when you're on a long road trip. But this thing is an absolute pleasure to drive. It's modern enough to where it has, again, a modern fuel system with a common rail fuel system and the kind of injection system that's again electronic, so it does a good job with the metering, and it can get 20 plus miles to the gallon on the highway, whereas the older ones with mechanical fuel injection, because they weren't quite so precise, I'm guessing you got worse fuel economy, and it's not clear how much worse, but I'm doubting you got 22 miles to the gallon on the highway. Also, you have to be comfortable with the fact that your truck is not going to want to go much faster than 70 miles an hour. It just doesn't like to rev. 2,000 RPMs, which is what it's doing at 65, is really about as high as you should push it if you want it to last. You can take it up to 70, and it's not going to complain. At 75, it's just not happy going that fast. The final drive is like a 410, and so it is going to rev at higher speeds, and just accept that and deal with it. Could you get like a 373 or a 355? Maybe, but keep in mind you're not dealing with a very powerful engine. This thing right here has only 235 horsepower. So you're not going that fast, and you're not pulling that heavy of a trailer. It's got 400 plus pound-feet of torque. It's got all the torque you need. But you can't be like an adrenaline junkie. You can't be 19 years old and want to drag race this thing. It's just not happening. All right, I think that's it then. Hopefully you get the point. And again, we could not be happier with this truck. Love every minute of driving it. Wish we could drive it more. It's just kind of our Southwest U.S. truck for the moment. And that's where it's probably going to stay. All right, well, thanks everyone. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.